Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is really my great pleasure to be here, and thank you to have invited me. I have been many times in Jeddah. This is my favorite city, in addition to my presentation I like to do today. You know, I was introduced as a robotician mainly, and you know, I have the grand chance today, which is very rare actually, that I speak how I started. So I don't remember any conference except one I gave in Japan some years ago about how I started and why I did that. So I thank you so much to have this kind of conference being organized, because I think it's so important for many young people to know how they can do better and continue this kind of work. Okay, so I was always interested, let's say, in two things. First, the human bodies, the human mind, and the visual aspect of it, and to automate that. So this is something I was interested in from the start, even as a child. I will tell you why. And what I noticed is this dream of automation is absolutely not new. You know, if you look at Aristotle in his politics books, and today we can read it, there are many editions on that. He was dreaming of that because on the democracy principle, he was thinking that if we don't need slaves to play music, you know, some basic music, then we could have automatons to do it. So the philosophy of it, at least in our Western society, dates from the Greek part. And if we continue, you can go to a museum in Greece and we can find an automatic servant. And I like this idea because robotics today is not new. It's already working at that time. And you know what is absolutely fabulous is we didn't know the Newton law at the time, but if we look at that, they try with what they know to make hydraulic process in order you can put your glass in the statue they had, and then automatically wine or water, I guess wine, was pouring in. So this is absolutely fantastic because, you know, they didn't have the technology, but at least all the ideas were already there. The democracy and the technology they had at that time. So what did we do over the time is not the presentation today, but I just like to mention, as I am born in Switzerland, I'm Canadian too, I worked in Canada, Europe and Asia. I like to say that at least in Switzerland, in Vienna too, in Europe in general, we were the makers of automatons. And in the 18th century, you know what I like in this is it's a combination of art and technology. They are absolutely fabulous. If you have the chance, I think in Vienna that's something, but at least in Switzerland we have three examples you can see here. They can play music, they can write. You see the writing or the drawings here, they can do that. And when we work at the motors they were doing at that time, it's almost impossible today to replicate because it's too complicated. So what we do today as robots is much simpler. The only difference, I mean the main difference between these ones and the robots we do today, which are very realistic, is that we have developed software in the 20th century. Here there is no software, everything is coded in the hardware. But that's a marvel absolutely to be seen. They are still working. This one is in Neuchâtel in Switzerland. Okay, just a bit about me. As I said, I'm so happy to share with you how it came that I did this kind of research in computer science. First of all, I was very much interested in human, and you know, at that time, there was almost no computer science study. Anyway, I like to study psychology because in Geneva, we have Jean Piaget. Maybe you have heard of Jean Piaget. He's a very famous person. He has more than 50 doctor honoris causa. He's a pillar of psychology, but it's not emotional psychology. what he did mainly and what we studied, I had the chance to be one of his students. There were not so many at the time. And what he did is mainly to model the intelligence. So he wrote quite a few books. One of those we had to know very much in detail is The Birth of Intelligence. And what was the message? The message was intelligence is being built. And schemes of intelligence are being built, and afterwards they are complexified over time. And at every year, for example, we made quite a lot of tests when children were able to distinguish quite a lot of things in the building of their intelligence. And I think he has done quite a lot of work in this, and I was very much influenced by him. So I was interested in this building of intelligence. And in the same time, I made a bachelor in biology, because as soon as you study the intelligence, very soon you think, okay, your body, your hormones, everything that works is linked together. So you cannot just learn the spirit and the formal creation of intelligence if you don't know how your biology works. So I had this extremely great chance to study biology. I made a master in biochemistry, from very general to detail. And finally, in my PhD, I made a PhD in physics, in quantum physics. So, where I was interested is to go from general and always looking in the detail. What is life? How do we come to the details? And if you do quantum physics, you are at the link between what you see or what is tangible and energy, what is intangible. So you come to the core of life. So this is something that is quite interesting. So the main point here I like to show is my PhD was to make 3D graphics. So one example is this one. These are the results of Schrödinger wave equation, a complex equation that explains a bit the behavior of electrons. Because our dear atoms and electrons have a behavior we can study. And also when molecules are being created, we can analyze that and visualize that. And I remember, as a PhD student, I had the chance in my defense to have a full room coming because people were not used to see visually something. So that was this in 3D. Such a drawing took, with a plotter at that time, 1 hour of plotter time, just to tell you that you couldn't do so many because it took quite a lot of time. So that was a bit my essence, what I'm interested in. So this is a bit this kind of equation. I don't know if you're a physicist in the room, then you can recognize a bit the domain. Just to see it's very mathematically physics-oriented, but anyway, things are all interlinked, and this is what I like to say. Okay, now after my PhD, I went to Canada. I had the chance, with all my background, to have a position as assistant professor at University of Montreal. And I started, in fact, the MIRALab lab at the University of Montreal. And now, just a small remember, the name came from my dear dog I took from Switzerland. You see, he looks like a shepherd of Switzerland. So this female dog came with me. Okay, so how did I come next to graphics? So in fact, as I made a lot of graphics in my PhD thesis, and I was so much interested in the human body, that was a time in the early 80s that people started, but we were extremely few people who started to think, to model virtual human. At that time, to render people was very complicated. So what we could do mostly is to make in 3D like wireframe. We could not make in 3D. Now I insist it's a big difference to make a 2D drawing or model by computer or going to 3D, because 3D started a big development. What we have today, the virtual reality and all that, is a result of all this early work. Everybody has afterwards continued in 3D. So here you see an example of a small kid who will 3D Philippe Bergeron, you know, who was a student, my husband, Nadia Thalmann, and myself. We were three to do this film. It took 1 year. Why it took 1 year? And everything was published, you know, in the academic world. When you are in any discipline, particularly in computer science, you have to publish your work in order others can take your findings and continue to add their own findings. Okay, so that was quite a lot of challenges because, you know, when you start at Pioneer, you have no methodology. So how do you do that? So first of all, we make a small scenario with a kind of graphics, which explain you afterwards, maybe also in another film. And we did this film, and we filmed the film in front of the screen. That was a 35mm film, so it was like computer animation, image by image produced, so you have to film it. So it was what our contribution in terms of computer science was mainly to define the MIRALab language. So what was it? If you are in computer science or have been, at that time there was the beginning of Pascal language. That was a Wirtz, a professor in Zurich in Switzerland who has invented this language. And then what we did is to make a graphics language out of this one with abstract data type. So this film was done only through programming. So you have to think that what you will see is 15,000 lines of code. So that's the reason why we took 1 year to do it. So hard work for 10-minute films. So just for the ones who like programming, but there are quite a lot of references. If some people are interested, here we can see how we define a bird type. So we define graphical type, so it's more structured programming. It's a help to make it higher level. You know, today we have ChatGPT, but to come to ChatGPT, we have to start it many years of augmenting the layers in order that we can just talk to ChatGPT. So it doesn't come automatically. You know, my main computer science course was in binary language. That means you just program in binary very near the machine. So this was very advanced because already we could define a type, what is a bird, and then afterwards you have the animation automatic. So this is programming, but it's more automatic programming. It's what we have done. Okay, I'll just show you a small example of this film and I will move to the next one. So that's a story of a small being on a planet. He was dreaming to come to Earth. He saw a bird passing and imitated the bird coming to our Earth, seeing Paris and New York, trying to talk to people, they refused. So then he destroyed the place and went back, and it was a dream. So there's too much light, maybe we take up the light. There's is working out.
So.
So you see the first object that were created for today, of course, is what is it? But you know, and as we studied physics, like me, we try to make simulation using physics-based equations. So in fact, it was quite a lot of research. So this is the arrival of the Earth. it's easy to do. It's in a wireframe naturally. Here, in terms of programming, what is interesting, we have fish and water, and the water was simulating using physics, and the fish also in the behavior. We have this graphic type fish, and you see here is based upon physics, so that's the research being behind in the programming language. So that was quite a complex scene because you have to move in 3D with the camera and also the behavior of the fish, how it goes. So just to explain a bit how it started, because we were very much at the beginning of the 3D animation. So I just show you the arrival at the Statue of Liberty. Okay, maybe I will skip to the next film. So, as you have seen here, then we were in wireframe. In the early 80s, people were fighting to go to have a vase, mainly a vase that is fully rendered. So this was the work also for us to do for virtual humans. So we decided, because we were celebrated 150 years of engineering in Canada, and we were invited. They come to me and say, make something great to show the know-how of Canada. And we decided to model Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart. You know, this was a very big challenge because everybody in the 80s were knowing these people. So making the first, what we name today avatar, twins, whatever, was very complex because nobody has done it before. So this is very interesting to know how we made it, because you have also there no methodology. You just have to think, you have a goal, what do I know and how I can do it. And this is a bit what we have done. First of all, if you look at that, we decided not to have programming language. If we continue like that, it would be impossible for others to continue to make films. So in my team, in MIRALab, where I was in Montreal, we hired designers and people were doing these films. That means that if you look, we define, but this is computer science, we define a system, MIRALab, where we can define all objects interactively, actor mode, decor mode. You know, it's an ancestor of what we have today. Afterwards, it was published many times, and also there were companies coming out of that. But if you see that, you could really work as an animator. And this is a very new system to allow designers to work. And then it takes less time to do things. So this is how we were working. And here what you see is, it's Marilyn and Humphrey. You see the 3D head and Marilyn. And here what is interesting, and you will see in the making of, we asked a sculptor in Montreal to make the sculpture of Marilyn and the sculpture of Humphrey, because at that time it didn't exist any scanner. So how do you know the 3D aspect of the person inside the computer? So we divide we draw on the statue the polygon, we put the vertex number and also the polygon number. So you understand the time we spend, and we make many photos. It will be explained in the making of afterwards. And then also what we defined, this is always today a paper, it is cited, which is very interesting because most people who do computer animation today use this method. And this method is that to be able that, in fact, when you have a virtual human, also today, you don't have anything inside. But how is the animation decided? It's because you have a virtual skeleton that deforms the external shape. And we defined an algorithm in 88, published in 88, that allows to have deformation at each articulation, smooth deformation, because when we move, our body deforms. So this is what we did in the time being, still being used everywhere today, this method. And now, if you look, we propose also facial animation. When Marilyn met Humphrey in a cafe in Montreal, in fact, they never met in life. It's a romance, and they fell in love together. Then we have to put expression on the face. So we define high-level abstract emotions. You know, it comes also from my background in psychology in this. And we could make Marilyn having expression and being able to have phonics and expression, which was absolutely new for actors who were never presented. Okay, so I just show you the making, at least one part of it, because it's really to show how was the ambience. It was done in 87, so at that time, and you will see how time has passed when you look at me. This is with my husband, Daniel.
Okay.
We walked through in Montreal.
The idea behind the scenario is that there are these two great legendary stars who are dead, but they are living in some kind of other world beyond the grave, and they long to return to Earth. So first Bogart appears and calls Marilyn and begs her to come to Earth. Of course, Humphrey is a real macho guy, and he only has to call Marilyn for her to come. They decide to meet in Montreal, near the place Jacques Cartier. So they meet inside a famous building. When Marilyn appears in the building, she is not made of flesh and bones, but of scales, then stone, and then gold. Humphrey gets rather impatient to see her in the flesh, but he takes a kiss like Prince Charming to bring her alive completely, and then her romantic episode begins. It was a big challenge to synthesize Marilyn and Humphrey. In Max Andrew, there is somebody there whose movements are filmed, and then he is given a sort of computer look afterwards. But we can represent anybody, living or dead, and we can give them all kinds of expressions that the real person has never made necessarily. We have always wanted to create electronic actors. In our previous film Dream Flight, we developed an imaginary being called Hippie, who was made out of wire. He was very simple, but he had emotions. But we wanted to create real actors so that we could simulate all their movements and expression completely by computer.
Okay, I will show you the other things. As soon as this film went out, it was shown all over United States, Canada, and particularly it was shown in Japan, just to see.
国際会議が開かれています。では、最初の国際ができているからご覧ください。
So, okay, so I don't show you again, but it was really a big event. Japanese are probably the first in forefront of everything that was 3D and very much interested. Now, just to go fast inside the next years in the 80s, we started very early. You have seen Marilyn has a dress that is fixed, and the research, which is very interesting, is how to model clothes and to make them physically simulated. It's quite complicated because the clothes touch the body, so we have to detect collision and also have self-collision. And you have to find the equation and you have to find ways how it is calculated very fast. So we spent, let's say, the next 10 years, not only on this topic, but on making clothes by computer, the simulation using physics. So here you see an example of this Marilyn first clothes. So that was also the first fashion show we could do, that clothes they form according to your walking. There was also a lot of research on walking because Marilyn and her friend were sitting, as you saw in the first thing. So the walking aspect was also research. And here that's a remake of this episode of Marilyn Monroe being on the underground station and refraining to retain her clothes.